Scotch tape, scissors, and all. Welcome back, everyone. Artist Journal, December 13th, 2024. Broadcasting from the North Pole, sometimes called Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, my hometown. Welcome back. Can you tell who this is? So exciting what Hermipe pixel art is doing out of Japan. So before we dive into it, actually, let me just say a big thank you. Let me tell you what I'm thinking as far as this show, because as you can see, it's already starting to freeze. Not only outside, it was minus 27 the other day, and that was just without the wind chill. It was minus 40 something just a couple of days ago, shortly after I arrived in Saskatoon a day later. So how long have I been here? It's Friday. I've been here, I think, since Tuesday morning. So Wednesday it got very cold. But as you can see, the screen is starting to freeze from too many tabs, and I'm hoping this is going to be the last of its kind, is kind of what I'm hoping. I'll tell you what I'm thinking as far as this show, because it's been sporadic, and I think put it this way. If you remember, I'm sure we've had many discussions on, say, the limitations placed on when you make art on Bitcoin, for example. And so these limitations force you to try and get to a certain outcome. So in my case, I did my pixel art Inferno, put on Bitcoin. And so it's too expensive to mint this stuff over, 5 or 6 kilobytes. And so what do you have to do? You have to make a small file. Maybe you do 2 colors and all this sort of thing. And I was actually quite pleased with the result. And the reason I say this is, let me tell you the outcome I'm hoping for this show, which I'm going to start experimenting towards. And I've said this in the past, and I never really acted on it because I always felt like I had to cover, in a sense, I was warning myself when I started this show, over 2.5 years ago, this is not a news show, as I kept kind of preaching to myself. And it kind of became a news show to a certain degree. What's happened in the NFT world to a certain degree, or art on the blockchain from Adrian Pocobelli's perspective. And as we watch the screen unfreeze. And so it kind of had mission creep. But where it started out, which is kind of where I want to return to, was, I found some interesting things here. Let's talk about this. It's kind of like have coffee with your internet friend Adrian and talk art. And when you do that, you can actually do it more often, because all of a sudden you're not spending, as I once again did again today, 2.5 hours prepping. Instead, I can spend 20 minutes prepping, as I used to when I started this show. And I'm not convinced that it's not going to be as good of a show. Let's see. So this audience has been very patient as I kind of disappear here as I travel. It's very hard to, I have to say, I always have these ideals of when I travel and being able to do the show, and it's tricky. Let's just put it this way, especially if you're staying places and people are around, it's tricky. So all to say, this is what I'm thinking. I get back to Berlin on the 27th, just to wrap this up. And I'm thinking when I am back, if not before, but when I am back, and it's going to be sporadic till I'm back. It's just I think the reality here. But I'm thinking the goal should be having the same idea as, say, with the Bitcoin, putting art on Bitcoin, 20 to 30 minute show. Don't keep even limit myself to 20, 30 minutes prep. An hour later, I'm out the door. I can make art again and everything. And I think it'll be better for the artists. There won't be as many artists in the show, but maybe I can do it daily though. Perhaps, thinking out loud here. So maybe you actually end up getting the same amount of content, but it's less onerous, right? So it kind of became a weight on my shoulder putting together an 1.5-hour show. And I felt like, I had to deliver on certain kind of almost newspaper-like expectations. So this is how I'm thinking about it. And so I hope, I think I've said this many times before, I'm going to force it, but this time I think it's existential, and it will happen. It will happen. So I guess I'm saying all this preamble, A, to let you know, for those that have watched for a long time, and which is deeply appreciated and humbling. But also, because there may be experimentation, it may be kind of a bumpy ride until we kind of get to where we need to go, as it always is in the creative process. So let us begin. Once again, thank you and happy holidays. It's starting to be, it's December 13th here. It is official, the Christmas season. And let me just make sure everything is working here. And I think it is as we begin. So Hermipe pixel art. We've been looking at Hermipe maybe the last, let's call it 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe when we first, I think we actually saw it earlier. But I started to show, let's call it 2 months ago. And you're going to see some of the earlier work in a second. But look at this. I mean, so this is a physical, as far as I can tell. And it's based on Hermipe's pixel art, which, again, out of Japan, which, as you can see, is given this, print-like, let me see if you see it's like comic book printing, what I think they call with Lichtenstein's work, the Bende dots. Right? And so it kind of looks like Riso, actually. And we know that Hermipe was playing with Riso, although Riso is usually a little flatter, I think. But perhaps it's Riso, 3 or 4, maybe 5 colors. It's probably Riso, which kind of makes it even kind of radder in the sense that this beautiful work of art can be produced relatively easily. And it brings up a whole other issue, which is, getting other people to screen print your work for you, as we saw with, who was it? Famous artist. Was it Damien Hirst? And there's other, I think it was Damien Hirst. We saw some screen prints. There's also, maybe you saw it on your Instagram. I see, I think Invader with the kind of Space Invader thing. And we're seeing, I think Henny puts out these screen prints, right? And so I'm saying all that to say, this whole kind of, what I would say is, to a certain degree, a romantic idea of you have to be making the screen print or it's not official, meh, is sort of what I say. And Riso, there are lots of Riso experts out there. You can do the Riso yourself. Again, I'm kind of like, maybe you just give it to an expert. You're still the director of the film. You're still directing the color. You're still you're still managing this thing. You're still the operator. You are still the CEO of your artwork. So that also should be kept in mind. Final thing on this. So what are we seeing here? We are seeing, as I broadcast from my sister's room, big shout out to my sister. As you're seeing from this work, we're seeing pixel art being processed through a kind of printing process that, is kind of famous for comic books, or at least this is, I assume this is actually Riso, which probably isn't comics, but a similar, print format. So we're traveling through the mediums, which again is an incredibly, I'd argue, is the cutting edge conversation here. To a certain degree. One of the, let's call it this, maybe more accurately, one of the cutting edge conversations in contemporary art, and I'd argue one of the most important, if not the most important, all debatable, and maybe I wouldn't even agree with that after discussion. But one of the most important, so, where I am right now, thinking about it, conversations, as I've kind of thought for a few years now, is this traveling through the mediums, and we've seen it with Warhol, we see it with John Baldessari, we see it with Richard Prince. All in the later work, I might add. And I think the later work of artists tends to get underrated, in my opinion, especially for the prolific artists like Warhol, Baldessari, and Prince, who are quite prolific, have kind of proven their chops with all sorts of interesting ideas and whatnot. So let's continue here. Interesting. Is this A3? I mean, that's kind of classic Riso. Not sure. And I love actually this printed signature. It's always these little details here. This is the kind of stuff that screams to artists. Like, it's like, oh, he didn't sign it. He used the Riso to sign it. Look at this. You could have started with this work. I mean, the negative space here. Look at this. We see pixelation, but done in this print style. So it becomes incredibly interesting, right? I mean, to a certain degree, one could argue the traveling through the mediums is the modern day version of traveling through the mediums at its most cutting edge from a digital perspective. Is that effects on effects? Is that is there something analogous there? Interesting kind of question here. But here again, we see, look at this. These, pixels here, these kind of nice wide pixels are being done in a print with these circles. It's a pretty and to great effect, right? Novel visual experiences are being created here, courtesy of a Hermipe pixel art. Look at this. Have you ever seen dithering in a print, with this kind of, what do they call it? Rasterization? Rasterized dithering? Pretty awesome, right? I mean, if anything, I would argue it works aesthetically. And even if it didn't, you could still say, cool experiment. And you could even say, even if it didn't work, you'd go, okay, we can add it to our scientific literature, so to speak, of art. Okay, this is what happens when that happens, right? But even better, it does work in aesthetically. And look at the signature. I assume that's a signature. I don't even know. And you have to love this big plant here. And remember, I think it was last show where we're also looking at Hermipe. I don't think I started last show, but it was in there. It was in the kind of tabs with the comments. And in that, remember the Japanese writing, and I translated it, and it talked about the mixel art style, I believe. And what's the mixel art style? MYXEL or something weird like that. Using, what I just call heavy contrast or different sized pixels, which often in pixel art is not used. So this is super interesting here too. And we see it kind of in spades here, being put through the printer kind of layer of this thing. You can see the original work, big pixels here, which is classic, actually. Here, you got some horizontal pixels. Here, just maybe some smaller, pixels. And here, seemingly, some dithering of some kind, perhaps manual. And as far as I remember, Hermipe works on his phone, I believe. So all incredibly interesting, isn't it? So here, and we also have a little translation here. And this is, if you go to Kamedo Art Center, you'll see they've been doing wonderful documentation here, which is why I bring it up here at different angles and everything. So they seem to be loving it as much as I am, if not more. So big credit and just impressive what's happening there. So let's continue just a few others, and let's even see what this says. I will be in the gallery today. The weather is nice, so please come and take a walk. This is also interesting, isn't it? So we see again, and let's just open this up super quickly. I mean, it almost seems like a spray, the airbrush of some kind, which is being rendered perhaps with Riso. Not even positive that this is Riso, but it kind of looks like it, doesn't it? Is this one actually signed? This one actually looks signed, right? So, like with a pen. So again, I imagine Hermipe is having, certain debates in his head about how this is signed. Look at how gorgeous the pixelation works here. And you can see finally here, like part of like this plant here, this pixelated plant really jumps off the page, doesn't it? There's something that really seems to be working. And I'd argue probably it's this contrast here with this kind of spray, very organic, curvilinear, as I always like to say. And here we have the rectilinear pixels, and even beautifully kind of gradiented somewhat. So lots of interesting stuff there. And actually, let me just go back, because there are actually just a few others, and kind of want to go through. Look at this. And you see that? These are tiny pixels here in this area. And again, it works quite well on the wall. The colors just emphasizing the modernness, and almost that neon almost says screen a little bit, right? So, and look at this, these vertical lines. Here, I believe it's the woodblock printing. We have seen this in the past. And okay, and so that we've seen, this we've seen, just more angles on it. This looks like woodcut and also, or lino cut, and also real signature, quote unquote, real signature. Look at this. Like this sort of stuff. Again, this is kind of the wood. This is what's beautiful, actually. Again, what is Hermipe brilliantly doing? He is traveling through the mediums, right? He's taking here what I'd call just a straight up pixel art work, but rather than going with the print process, as in the other works we've seen, here going to woodblock or, lino cut, which is basically the same thing, just a different tool you carve into. I assume maybe it's a screen print. It's not super clear to me here. But this is the great thing about going physical is you get all of these artifacts here. And these become, this randomness, this controlled randomness becomes, it's the equivalent of the brushstroke, I would argue, the textured brushstroke, the randomness within the control, the chaos in the order, right? Contrast. Why does that work? Universal contrast, dare I say. Nice frame, too. You ever go down the framing route? Look at that. Nice Passepartout, or what would you call that? Maybe a matte in America. Let's continue. What does it say here? Maybe we have a clue on what this is. That is not helping. Do we have a clue here? Translate lithograph and woodblock prints. All right. We're on the right track here, my friends. I was amazed by the spirit of inquiry and the quick thinking that went into the lithographs and woodblock prints, and it was as if I had entered a novel. Thank you for coming. So this is by the K-Art Center. Indeed, that detail, right? That randomness, controlled randomness, incredibly powerful, isn't it? Kind of something you could argue which separates modern art from the past. I mean, one could argue, as the brushstroke, let's say with Turner, and who did all the ships and everything, and to the Impressionists, and even before, I guess we have like Rembrandt with just a little bit of texture. We have even Titian, right, starting to go down that rabbit hole, so to speak. This introduction of randomness, I would argue, is kind of a modern aesthetic discovery, shall we call it? A modern aesthetic discovery, but which you can trace back to, let's call it Titian, when they celebrated, when they began to celebrate the brushstroke, right? Let's see if there are, look, and here it is, dare I say it. So it doesn't need to be a brush, right, to get this effect. And here's just some, to Hermipe's credit, some pretty cool experimentation here. I mean, these two layers seem to have nothing to do with each other. One could argue. Maybe Hermipe would probably feel differently, but, stark, different images being used here. And it could be just as simple as, putting it into the photocopier again, and just saying, hey, forget it. We got this first one didn't work very well. Let's say with the beige here or whatever it is. Let's just make an experiment and then we have this, right? Let's continue. And this orange. So we saw this. And of course we saw it, look at how stunning this surveillance camera is. And again, I could be totally wrong here. Like Hermipe, this may be completely not as kind of whimsical as I was describing, that pink one. And look, we have, and you're seeing people online, like Hermipe's doing, I'd say very well. We've seen collaborate with Starbucks. I think, it was the other artists we're looking at out of Japan who collaborated with Adidas. But you look at this is also brilliant. The use of white as basically a color on kind of gray, something also that often happens when you're working digitally. White kind of, I would argue, it kind of, I don't want to say it's new because white's a really interesting color. Let's just leave it there to return to at another point. But this is a nice little technique by putting basically, let's say, a light gray background, all of a sudden white takes on a whole other property. It kind of becomes a color to a certain degree. So yeah, so Hermipe, starting the show here. Really cool space here. Keeping the spaces going here. On Wednesday, I did the space with Tezos, super interesting space. Talked about the RGB Montreal exhibition that they did, as well as Tezos' work. Super duper interesting individuals. I never cease to be impressed by the depth. When you talk to people, you always discover way more than you might have expected. Like, it's kind of it's just really impressive. So, makes great art, and then happens to be super into the avant-garde and music and everything. Thank you everybody for collecting this. People are canceling their Netflix promoted story, and thank you everybody for the collect. It's really impressive. Because the Tezos price has gone up and the collecting continues here. Like, we're seeing it with this 200 Tez event. Super impressive. The collecting. Anyways, the resilience of the scene. Here we go. Comments on last show and out of Bologna. So yeah, at least a couple of weeks ago here. Prutux, thanks for opening so many windows on the digital art world, Adrian, as well as many other fascinating things. I feel like I have 10% more new neurons every time I watch your show, as well as 10% more informed art enjoyer. Cheers. Thank you for bringing that up. This is a pretty darn interesting conversation, isn't it? Thank you for reminding me. That is a pretty darn interesting conversation. So I'm glad you're enjoying it, Prudix. And it is the nature of conversation. Like, a lot of this stuff I think I mentioned last show would not be coming up without this discussion that we're having and people like yourself saying how interesting. So I agree. Super interesting subject. And thank you for the comment. K-Town Crypto King. What is at... I actually looked at these, but I looked at them 2 weeks ago, K-Town Crypto King. So I am going to continue here, but I'm glad you're liking what you're seeing. I continue to be super impressed by the scene and the quality of the art that is coming out. Rata Yonki, wow, what a beautiful intro. And indeed, and who did we have in the intro there? Yes. Hasdrubal Waffle. Also known as Cedar Plank. We have some more works, and we have a work by Rata too. Shout out to Rata. Stipin Pixel. Really thanks, Stipin Pixel here. We have a work, by Stipin Pixel coming up. Thank you for the comment. Gordon, thank you. Neuroplasticity. This is what I was trying to get to. The fact that the brain is not a static, entity. And as we were discussing last show, when you do new things, it's kind of hard. It's almost like those are you like digging the tunnel to the next kind of neural connection. But then once you have that tunnel, it exists. And then it's a lot easier the next time. And as you kind of bore and kind of create that path, the pathways in the brain, it's like learning a new language. And how can we do that? It seems to me neuroplasticity, right? So, excuse me, just getting over a flu there. It's been, so many people are sick this season. So anyway, I am over it now. Yes, and highly agreed. Re-advice to the young artists out there. Learning the basics, anatomy, perspective, line, value, color, etc. Gives you the best foundation from which to explode outward in new unforeseen directions. Most of the best, most radical artists of the past had a foundational education in classical art and drawing. It's a fantastic place to begin your journey. The more you learn the rules, the more you learn how they can be recombined. And I love the word recombined. Excuse me. So, yeah, this is important. Now, the one caveat I'd have on this, because I totally agree with you agreeing with me, but the one caveat I have on this is, for those that have, and I think those who have studied, how to be realist art, and of course I did this in Toronto, it can be really difficult once you, and I only took like two-week classes, but in a sense, I would argue to a certain degree in the modern world, it's kind of all you need to learn how to oil paint and to understand how you build and construct a painting, okay? And to do it in a quote-unquote realistic way where you could by putting layer over layer and adding more oil, etc., and these glazes, if you know how to build it properly, it's actually, I don't want to call it easy, But it's surprisingly easy compared to how difficult you might think it is, because it feels completely out of reach. And what I would just want to say with this is, once you start learning those techniques, it took me about 5 years to get away from that, because all of a sudden you feel like painting with to make like an abstract expressionist painting, once you have learned, put all these paths in your brain on how to paint and make something kind of beautiful in kind of a realistic way, it's really hard to unlearn. And just as I'm trying to force this show to be a 30-minute show, and I will, you kind of got to do the same thing. And it took me years to force myself back into kind of the sandbox where I'm just playing again, rather than, doing some sort of realist painting. So, yeah, these pathways in the brain continue to feed our conversation here. Illusion T Soul, having fun with the art is incredibly important. Indeed. Sometimes you just have to work through it. Like if you're doing a series and you get through it, but it is important at some point in that process, you should be having some fun. And that is kind of where you hit flow as an artist, I'd argue, where you're just like, you're completely unafraid and everything you're doing is interesting, and you seem to know what to do, right? So having fun is another way of stating that. I think about that a lot when I hear people really put an emphasis on the way the artworks are released, stressing aspects of price and sale volumes, all those things. But when I make my work, it's the emotion and feeling about what it likes to create it. Playing with the process, really. Sorry, I go on, but that's what I feel when I work, enjoying the process, exploring the experience, the past, the heritage, thinking about the whole. And I think we may need to reload this very quickly here. About the whole, thinking about the pattern. Indeed. Jeremy Austin, thank you, Illusion T Soul. Jeremy Austin, listening to Poco talk about listening to Poco whilst making pixel art, whilst making pixel art. So thank you, Jeremy Austin, who's been putting out some pretty cool pixel art, as a matter of fact. Great to hear from you. Longtime viewer of the show, Jeremy Austin. Cedar Plank, or Cheddar Plank, as he's now known. That should be a cheese. Is there a cheese sandwich? I don't think there's a grilled cheese. Too bad, but I think there's cheese. So anyways, let's continue. Thank you, Poco. I showed my cat the episode and he made this face. So we all love cats over here on this show. So bring on the cat photos. Thank you, Cedar Plank. Much appreciated. This is hilarious. Also, is that Howdy Do? No, it's Perizila, the rainbow raven, but hilarious to put Howdy Do. I assume that's a reference to Howdy Do. Braindead. A notorious collector on Tezos, if you are not aware. Braindead, I just found a chance to watch. Great episode, as always. Thank you, Braindead. We have a work by you, actually, this show. Pedro Jose, Pocobelli, just in time to relax with a good copy. And, of course, the Artist Journal, it's like a match made in heaven. So, again, I'm hoping to do this show actually more often than previously by shortening the thing and kind of bringing it back to its roots. And so I kind of needed that break in order to, again, it's kind of back to these paths in our brains to kind of start thinking about new ways of doing things and deprogram myself to a certain degree. I've also just been traveling, so it's always sounds easy. Anyways, thank you for the comment. And yeah, it's funny that you mentioned the coffee, because a friend of mine was starting a magazine like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7, in Berlin, and she wanted to do a column, Adrian Gets Coffee. So it's kind of like what this show turned into to a certain degree, or what it is. Walk, great to hear from you, rad artist. I think we have a work by Walk at the end, mysterious work. Luciana Guerra, great to hear from you. Suji, thank you for the comment. Nostalgia, unlimited quality content, thank you. Gogo Lightus, thanks so much, Adrian. And Gogo's also getting over a flu. Get well soon. Enigmatris, nice seeing you back. Great to have you. I believe we have a work by you, Enigmatris. Naraman, thank you for the comment. Lula, GM, cool. A Mario on a magic carpet. I love it. So I haven't done the community here today, and I wonder if that's how I can shorten the show, because, yeah, I've been thinking about that too, and ways I can just shorten the show. So what I'm thinking, again, it's all very nebulous and working on, building the plane in the air. But I think perhaps maybe you do a live show on like Fridays. And that's when maybe you do the community all at once, let's say on Friday perhaps, and you do it all, say, on the live show, potentially. And still, you don't need to take too long on it. but maybe something like that. So anyways, let's continue. We have a lot to go through. We're already at our half-hour mark. Let's continue. So here's Katya Kazakina, and I just wanted to highlight really the headline. Not desperate, not euphoric. At Art Basel, Miami Beach, dealers adjust their expectations and expenditures. So, and I thought this was hilarious, actually. I don't know if this is the first time I'm drinking coffee on the show. But that was delicious. That was... You have a lot of patience with me out there. That was delicious. Let's continue. One sign of the times, the consignor of a 27 million Gerhard Richter may be prepared to take a loss. And look, I like some Gerhard Richter. I think Gerhard Richter is a good artist, but he gets overplayed to a certain degree, and he's kind of turned into this deified figure here. Well, I guess I'm not in Germany right now, and it kind of gets overplayed, and so I'm kind of curious to know which Gerhard Richter. I don't know if it's here, because Katya, no. It might be if we waited for that video of the article to go through. Another way to read these articles is to go onto the Twitter feed, or the X feed, and usually those links cross the paywall when they're linked from Twitter, FYI. Just to get, because we're kind of paying attention to the art market here. So how was it? Not desperate, not euphoric. And Gerhard Richter. But this is all kind of in keeping to me. It's like of the narrative, which is there is a sense that, as Amadon says here, traditional art feels so stale, retro, boring. Perhaps overstated, but you know what? I kind of relate. Like... When's the last time, I think I've mentioned this maybe last show, like when was the last time you went, and actually, look, if I went to Hermeeps, it doesn't mean there's, we're painting with a broad brush here. And there are great artists. We've had this conversation many times, right? If I was at Hermeepe's show, but is that trad art, right? Is that trad art? And I don't think Hermeepe is trad art just because it's physical. I've actually kind of commented on this, the new humor, a lot of the art we're seeing on Instagram. I don't consider that trad art either, right? It's not gallery, machine, whomever, the humor. It's not like that has really crossed over. It's not gallery, looks like an Instagram page to me. Is that even a real gallery? I don't see, there is a sense that, it's kind of like an industry that is crying for disruption. To a certain degree, which I'd argue we've been doing for years out here. Interestingly, like this whole blockchain is just one, expression of this, but also what we see on Instagram. Where all of a sudden the people are kind of voting with their likes and with their follows and everything, and all of a sudden someone like, is Hermeepe, for example, a product of social media in a sense, like the collaboration with Starbucks. Is that it's probably because of social media, right? How many people are found and artists are found by corporations or, whomever, collectors through social media. So I think an interesting, and frankly, I think there's something to be said for this, to generalize. We've seen it all before. And it's like there's another story that I didn't bring up here, which is Sotheby's, laying off a whole bunch of people. Was it 1,000 people? Was it more? Right? I think we live in a different world now, and they're still, in 2025, and they're still kind of serving up, no surprises over here, in the trad art scene, and they did incorporate, to their credit, the auction houses, some blockchain art, but it was I'd argue, fairly narrow. The way they approached it, and it's probably just a function of, the reason they're not putting Tezos artists at Sotheby's is because the prices. So maybe it stands to reason. So all very interesting. Seed phrase. Now here, there's something, it's not the writing itself that I kind of want to highlight here, but there's a message here. So artists, you're going to win so much in 2025. So kind of sounds like parroting to a certain degree the new president of the U.S., you're going to be winning so much, you're going to not be able to take it anymore. But as digital art goes mainstream, this is the question. In 2025, will digital art go mainstream? And I would argue it's a slow motion mainstream that's happening. I would argue. and it is mostly through social and blockchain, digital art. I would argue that's going mainstream. But look at this. Like, so I went to the Tate when I was in London. I don't know, was it a week and a half ago? December. I'm not sure where that came from. December. Let's call it 3rd. I think I went to the new Tate show, Electric Dreams, with RJ, who is from England, and so. And what was funny about that show, I was like, oh, are we going to find like a super... You can tell there's an appetite to create digital like shows. But the unifying, we're kind of surprised to discover. The unifying theme, I would argue, from my perspective of that show, was electricity. So it had like The Dream Machine by William Burroughs. And hey, I like The Dream Machine. But this is not the exhibition I thought. It had some cool works that were what I'd call second generation of digital art, video game inspired, but just like hardly any. There was also the artist who had the show at the Whitney, who does the early AI, whose name escapes me at the moment. Beautiful work. So there was like a handful of works. But overall, you can tell there's an appetite for digital, but it made me think, like, if this is the Tate, and they're still, I would argue, like, if they're feeling, oh, we don't know what to, and this is just my personal interpretation, we don't know what to put in this show, so we're going to put The Dream Machine by William Burroughs because it's electric, because we don't, like, there was some generative work of like artists from, the generative, like what you might call the first generation of digital art. There was some of that, but you could tell there was just this struggle, I would argue, to fill the rooms. And even just the kind of music, the spirit of the show was very much trad, which was interesting because it's almost like they were trying to do the new stuff, but it was hard to escape the trad paradigm, interestingly. So all to say, I think this is kind of an interesting thing to consider, And here, look at this. I'm not a huge Ai Weiwei guy. I'm not a huge fan of the message here, but I am a huge fan of what this is doing. If we kind of ignore the message, this is Ai Weiwei, who continues to do the pixel art thing. And was that a person who was also doing screen printing? Right? And where it's not like Ai Weiwei was doing the screen printing, right? So I say, as digital artists, don't worry about, like, do the screen printing if you want to, especially if there's going to be certain kind of things about it. Otherwise, just get the screen prints made for you, like the other, like people like Ai Weiwei and Damien Hirst and whomever else. I'd say there's nothing wrong with it. Sign it. You designed it. You're the director. You're the operator. That's fine, right? So this is interesting. This is Lego. Okay. So Lego kind of done with this, like, it almost looks like an Ed Ruscha type of message here. But this is done with Lego. But the important part is celebrating the dithering, right? So Ai Weiwei, who kind of seems to have an eye on Twitter or X, isn't that interesting? So, as I discussed in the space with Tezos, a kind of looming question at the back of my mind is pixel art really starting to take a major, is it becoming a major genre in art, in capital A art, going beyond digital? Because I think it is. I suspect it is. And it's like, well, hasn't that been around since the 1980s? Yes. But then we think of E-Boy, two people out of Germany. They're considered like pioneers of pixel art in like the early 2000s, right? Considering, pixel art as art, capital A art, I guess. And then what you see now is kind of like this explosion of productivity, so it's kind of interesting. Like, there's a resilience to pixel art, all to say. And what I wonder to myself, it seems to have a universal appeal. It's got universal qualities. Its geometricness, right? It's kind of digitalness, as I think RJ said in the space we did a year and a half ago. It's kind of like the primary unit of the digital art is the pixel. So again, I bring up this question once again: is pixel art is there something special about pixel art? Right? Just kind of an interesting question, and not just rather than just like, oh, there are some people on the internet that kind of are aficionados and whatever. No, I could see pixel art actually weirdly kind of standing the test of time in a way that, with emphasis, shall we say, as a distinct thing that doesn't need any apologies, that's not about some subculture, but it's just a thing. Like there's Impressionism, there's pixel art. That's the kind of provocative thesis I present to you here. So let's continue. This is what I wonder to myself, but I'm increasingly, here I am 2.5 years later, again, finding it hard to bring pixel art on the show. Is this art? Here I'm going, look at the journey that's been made here. Now it's like, will this stand the test of time as Impressionism might? Who knows? Interesting question. Santiago, Tezos is the chain for collecting art and trading real uranium. So I guess firms launch physical uranium buying for small investors using the Tezos blockchain, Reuters. So I guess you can buy uranium on Tezos, which is kind of hilarious. So I just share that here. And it brings up something that I've been kind of loath to mention for actually the 2.5 years of this show. So how do I know how to broadcast is actually because my quote unquote real job is a weekly podcast. It's on the Northern Miner podcast, and it's on Tuesdays. I put it out, and I've been doing that for about 6 years. It's a newspaper out of Toronto. It's a natural resources podcast. And so my life here, so maybe this is the apropos moment to say that. So as I'm thinking to myself, as I go perhaps daily, that maybe Tuesdays I like to just dedicate to that show. And so on the Wednesday, I also have the space, but maybe I may go on the weekend too. Let's put it this way, is how I'm starting to think about this, if it's just low commitment. And maybe there's going to be days that I miss, right? Things happen. Maybe you get hungover and you're just not in the mood, right? But all to say, there's, put it this way, in my kind of ideal world as I reframe this show in my head, wouldn't it be great if you can have a coffee with Adrian, if that's something you enjoy doing, that every day you have that option, but just on Tuesday, it might be, natural resources and geopolitics, where we'll talk uranium. So I found this hilarious. So that is out. So the myth. I kind of love this. I kind of love this statement. And Myth's been doing a lot of trolling and all sorts of kind of like hilarity and kind of pushing boundaries and whatever. But what I kind of love about this statement, I am the myth, nothing can destroy me except the myth, is I actually found this kind of rang true. Like the myth is very much a self-made figure on the blockchain. Like, even with all of the masterpieces that the myth has made, still has never really, has gotten some kind of love outside of, Tezos and whatnot, but has never really broken through to what you might call the Ethereum mainstream in a huge way. And what I love about this is nobody can destroy the myth. Only the myth can destroy the myth. And I think that's true for all of us as artists. It's like only you can really, it's kind of like that Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins, right? Which was doing the rounds a couple of years ago. This guy who just did these insane marathons and Navy SEALs type stuff, and just like nothing, you can't hurt me. And this is kind of what this myth statement reminded me of. I loved it. So here we go. So Gogolitis, who of course I follow, that is a glitch on X. Chill Crafting. So Gogolitis in the studio here. So very cool here, showing how the sausage is made, as they say. So look at this. So what is going on here? So is there an animation that's going on, and then Okay, so just adjusting. Okay, and there are all the pieces of the puzzle. Pretty complicated work. You see all the art that goes in, all of the work that goes into the Go-Go Lightest art piece. Here's Artie Hands showing Sabato Box, learning Paintbox 1981, and he doesn't know I'm behind him. And is that the animal? I suspect it is. So hilarious, using what looks like a huge Wacom. Almost a retro Wacom, old screen, and there is Sabato at work. So always hilarious. Now, here, this is interesting too. This is also Sabato, a physical edition I made for my mama. For my mom, just got framed. This is an SVG data bending glitch from a photo I took at 2018 Antique Show. There's another print edition that was lost at Garros Airport in Sao Paulo in 2022. So pretty cool. And it just goes to show, like, make your work physical. You know, it's just another reminder. If you see an opportunity to make your work physical in a persuasive way that feels like it's giving something to the art piece, by all means, do it, is what that reminds me of. This is pretty cool, too. Preparing screens, Uxine. So it sounds like preparing, because Uxine's been screen printing at home. And look at this, taking these very digital, you know, these transformed and distorted and pixelated computers here, and then taking this old 1960s, 1970s process of screen printing. Nice, simple two-color screen print here. So very cool. Curious to see how those turn out. Here's Lorna Mills running everything for my fellow artists at On-Chain Growth in Berlin on a screen curated by SS Luke. So I am out of the city. So I missed this, but looks like a pretty cool show here. And looks kind of racy here. So I will continue. As Lorna Mills' work sometimes can be. So Murakit, work in progress printing with Can Press risograph. So here we go again, right? The power of Riso and pixel art. So here is Murakit, rad artist. I think we have some beautiful works by Murakit this show. Lovid, more interesting physicals here. So not exactly sure exactly how this is made, but pretty cool. Looking good. And here's Gregorio Zanardi. This is going to be a work that's going to be on Super Rare, basically a physical NFT or digital art piece, or rendered digitally or sold digitally. A pretty nice painting, isn't it? I mean, the pool tiles, the distortions, almost has a digital feel to it in these distortions. Pretty cool work. And look at this young artist here doing beautiful work. Speaking of beautiful work, look at RJ. And big shout out to RJ, who had the fortune of hanging out with in London. It was pretty fun. And look at this. So super beautiful composition here by RJ. Again, using AI, pixel art, and all sorts of renditions here. Fabulous piece. Dwelling. I think this is for the 200 Tez event. So selling two of them. One to Neon Monk and one to Artie Hands, I believe. So just gorgeous piece here as we begin. And you gotta love these little crops here and everything. Beautiful work. Here's another one. Bad Figure, AI and Pixel Painting Collage GIF. Edition of 1, still available, 150 Tezos. So very cool work here by RJ. You gotta love the painterliness, the texture. This is to a certain degree the promise of AI. To a certain degree, one of the promises of AI is, hey, we have a composition machine. And here's another cool composition you might never have thought of doing, using combination and all of these samples, coming out with the new rendering. And then let's apply our pixel process and boom. Modern day painting. Original modern day digital art. And this one looks static. Interestingly, and I love how RJ's changing the resolution here. Like some are bigger than others. I love these edges, by the way. I love this it's always these superficial things that I'm kind of all over. But also interesting composition, nice colors, very interesting, cool title, Fragment of Hours. And here are some Internet People, another cool series by RJ here. So all sorts of goodness here. Here's an edition of 150 Tezos, still available. And another one. This is an edition of 1 for 69 Tezos. And so just knocking work out left, right, and center. So again, another one of the promises of AI, and this is a GIF. Almost looks like an MP4 or a movie. So very cool here. Here's Martin Bruce, Ricola, always upsetting expectations and full of surprise. Now with some strawberries and apple, maybe a watermelon, and what was the title again? Ricola. Fruit hanging in a cave like a mobile. And it almost looks like Calder Mobile here, but with fruit, and then this strange kind of human-made cave. Interesting work as ever. Edition of 12, 10 Tezos, and 3 gone by great Martin Bruce, the great Martin Bruce. And here's an edition of 1, and this is for 1,000 Tezos. And I believe we've seen this work before, but this is perhaps a digital version of a physical work, adding some kind of TV snow, and there we see some ducks, and just another super original art piece by Martin Bruce. Digital version of an original painting created by Martin Bruce, 900 by 700, so not too big. 1 of 1, that'll be 1,000 Tezos, please. Continuing on, look at Yuri J. February. So was doing some works. I think we showed a lot of works, but not all of them, actually. I think that we might be missing some seasons work from Yuri J, but there's a lot to look at here. So here is February. So playing with seasons here, a nice winter work. Edgy. It almost looks like physical over here. It almost looks like watery brushstroke here, even here. Quite organic. What's going on here, isn't it? And there, I think Yuri's experimenting with photography, right? To great effect. Not an easy thing to do, digital art and photography, and make it, persuasive. Super interesting. Here's another beautiful thing. And I realized with Yuri's doing it right. Because I've always said, look, you can put out a work, but there's so many different iterations you can put out in digital art. Almost how do you decide? Maybe you should put out a few of them. And I think the key is, from just a pure market perspective, is you put them out all at once so the collector is aware, okay, there's going to be 4 versions of this, rather than putting one out, sell it for a big number, and then you put out your little other versions, and maybe the collector's like, oh, I didn't realize there's going to be other versions. All to say, I don't think you should get too worried about it, but this is cool. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So Spring's Tale. Oh, look, another version. The Dangerous Summer. Right? Oh, cool. And oh, The Autumn of the Patriarch. Nice title. And here we see different textures. And here, Winter's Tale. Another nice title. And there is the mosaic filter. Signature. And look at all of the risks that are taken here. And it's a very interesting thing. When artists get good, I would argue, basically little areas can seem like almost like no effort was put in. Right? It's like, oh, or maybe are not that special. Let's say if you look up just super close and you took it on its own, you wouldn't be sure. But then when you look at the whole, you see the brilliance, you see the mind and what's going on here and the subtleties and the global picture. And with that, then it kind of becomes its thing, right? So you zoom in on a Picasso, it's like you look at a few, you go, okay, that's a nice brush stroke, but maybe nothing, maybe you could have made that brush stroke, right? But then you zoom out and you look at the whole thing as a whole, and then you go, comprehensively, and then you go, okay, that's pretty rad. So nice work here by Yuri J, and that was picked up by Sunday Funday for 125 Tezos. I'm telling you, the market's resilient. It took a few days. I think it's a selective market, but some people are saying they're not selling as much. But I am seeing a lot of sales. I think the market, perhaps as the Tezos price gets higher, and in a sense the work gets somewhat more expensive, it's a little more selective. And that's not a bad thing, right? It just means if it's not selling, you got to keep pushing. Either you have to do more marketing, but probably maybe you need to push the work, whatever, in a sense, In a sense, we're all fighting there for those few Tezos that are on the market. But what I would say, though, is there's a surprising amount of Tezos that is still being spent on a regular basis on art, and that's good for everybody, right? Because ultimately, we all want the game to continue, right? So, cedar plank. We have a few cedar planks, I'm happy to announce. So here, again, almost just like what I was just saying about Yuri J. So you look at here on its own, you're like, okay, right? It looks like a doodle, nothing special. But you look as a whole, all of a sudden it's like, oh, okay. Using kind of interesting softwares here. All sorts of, you start seeing the risks that are being taken. You start all of a sudden seeing these like, what is this? Is this someone in a car imagining that they're skateboarding? What is going on here? And there's a cat on a skateboard. This person is smoking. There's a landscape. What skate or die? Commute. So is this person, is it like almost like a former skateboarder is now going to work on their commute and they're just thinking about skateboarding on their way to work? Poetic work, if that's what's going on. Swoosh. So I think this is also new by Cedar Plank, one of these kind of epic, I want to say all-in-one pieces, just anything and everything. And then if you zoom out, you start to see a little narrative here, but just chaos, right? Swoosh, edition of 3. When did this come out? December 7th. This is new. And so cool work here and some other works here. Backdoor, and I think this is kind of the Cedar Plank Hasdrubal Waffle figure, I think. And there they are again, and maybe using the stamp tool. So again, what I love about these works is the whimsical thing, and it's almost like, it's just like the Yuri J. It's kind of like you look at any individual stroke, you go, oh, well, maybe I could do that. But then you go zoom out and you go, well, I probably would have needed different softwares. Would I know how to do that? Yeah. So, and then you see all sorts of little humorous bits here. Just very cool. And here with a little bit of these pennies and some snow and whatever is happening here, maybe some different softwares. Again, and what is Toss is the name of maybe someone in a bikini. Again, just very chaotic, but pretty cool. A nice tableau. This one's a little more a little more coherent. Barataria. And so here, just, classic, using a lot of eyes, as Waffle likes to do. Nice square piece here. And different kinds of mark making and everything. In a sense, I'm no clearer on what's going on here, but it's pretty cool. That much I know. So a cool GIF here. And the market loves these things, accepting an offer for 90 Tezos, right? So $150, edition of 3, right? So it's selling quite well and everything. So here's another one, Ambush. And maybe playing with these kind of army guys. Another cool, there's a helicopter. So I find this work very inspiring because it just makes you think, don't overthink things. Same with Yuri J. Don't overthink it. Just start putting stuff down, and you'll be amazed at how much, and it's just like Yuri J doubles things. Was this doubled, right? Over here, this triangle. Maybe it wasn't, but maybe it was, right? There's the triangle again. And look, I love this. The fire at the back. I couldn't even tell that was a fire. And again, kind of has that video game vibe, right? And so on we go to Zuozo, Tripping at the Landscape Museum. Cool title here from Zuozo, still available. Let's see if we can play this without killing our microphone. Kind of has a museum vibe to it, so very cool. Kind of has a museum vibe. Very cool there. People talking, and we have some others. This was brilliant. Controlled nature. Speaking of museums, I mean, this is what I thought to myself. Like, could this just go in a museum? Pretty cool. Look at that palm tree. So, brilliant work from Zozo. Here's one more. A little more soothing. Really rich water. And look at this great, really warm pixelation here. Kind of looks like a waterfall through a new life in the trees. Let me just adjust the mic. So very cool there. Here is Michiyasu. Oh, we have music here too. Pretty cool music, actually. Pretty cool piece. Again, challenging. I mean, look at these drop shadows. Now let's see what's going on here. Edition of 200. So this is for Absurd Deity picking up 2, awesome. Ile picking up 1. Very reasonably priced 1 Tezos. Very cool work by Mishiyasu. Nov 1914, and so catching up here. Edition of 4 still available, 10 Tezos, so a beautiful big flower. Kind of a classic subject matter for Nov 1914 out of Argentina. And look at these. So we have these movies that Nov has started doing, Situation Romance, and look at these drops with the keeping. I think this is quite brilliant. Keeping, it's like a PNG that was turned white, or maybe it's just a JPEG of a drop, right? Keeping that, I'd call that a happy accident. Let's hit play here. And so I don't think any audio, no audio. So very kind of slow moving animation here. So just interesting work here. I think at MOV, interestingly, because they are videos. Edition, oh, this was burnt. So just so you know, so here's an edition of 5. So interesting experimentation here from Nov 1914. So someone, and we're kind of back to this, digital art, you can have a million iterations. And in a sense, that's true for physical to a certain degree. If you're screen printing, but if this is an oil painting, to repaint this each time with each different kind of frame here, it's interesting, isn't it? Like this kind of loose animation, the person looking in the mirror. It's like someone at home, and even a bit of humor there when they're lying on the table. Interesting. Let's take a look at another one. This is an edition of 6 for 4 Tezos, and a couple of elves, perhaps, on a river, maybe a hut. And then some of these stars we were seeing in earlier works are now kind of moving along, kind of sparkling in the night. So interesting there. Pretty reasonably priced. Here's La Niebla, edition of 2, and this is sold out, Klaus Bein both, at only 5 Tezos. And so pretty interesting experimental work here from Nov 1914. Cider. As we pass the hour mark, excuse me. I hope this is the last hour-and-a-half episode. Look at this work by Cider. It is a bit of a catch-up show. Verseworks, long run by Cider. So this is on Verseworks. Pretty cool piece here. 2,050, so half an ETH. 10 bids so far. Auction ended, so sold for half an ETH. Good job to Cider. High rounds, kind of an avant-garde piece to a certain degree. It's an abstract, so good work there. That's on Verseworks. Here's Rosatio, Inferno, edition of 90. So burn 5 of these is part of what it says there, interestingly. So interesting. So kind of classic Rosatio, the banana, the eye, the skull, right? That's for 200 Tez event. And here's another one. Is this a bug hotel or my computer? Edition of 20. And maybe this was this burnt? Not sure. Just a few transferred. And anyway, let's look at the work. And some interesting incorporation of more pixels with digital collage and some operating system iconography, some all sorts of stuff. A little bit of animation. Cool work by Rosatio. Here's a really cool work also by Retromani. Let me just get things set up here. It's just like a little intro. I love it. The CD. You know what this could be? Among many, many other things. It's like, it's like 20th Century Fox or Paramount when the movie starts. This is like a Retromani production here. Beautifully done, isn't it? So now this, if it doesn't crash my computer, 100 edition of 100. So for the 200 Tez event. So very cool there. Here's another one, I think also for the 200 Tez event. So again, ton of money crossing hands for digital art. It's fabulous. Let's play here on Limbo. So more cool kind of audio. That is max volume. Pretty cool. Kind of horror, pixel art horror. Very cool. Love the kind of video game kind of vibe. The Cursed Hour Part 8. So that is available for 15 Tezos, sold out at 10 for Limbo. Here's Mary Migraine. Burn Me at the Stake. So interesting painting here by Mary Migraine on Object. So cool, almost kind of gothic work here. Red frame. Cool digital painting. Edition of 87 for 1 Tezos and part of the 200 Tezos event. Here's Dan Control. November 12th. So maybe we saw this one. Edition of 1 for 180 Tezos. Doing different cartoon characters. And this one, perhaps an anime, kind of looks half like Alice in Wonderland, but maybe with an anime head. Not even sure. But I just love what Dan's doing. The name of Cain means dark red scarlet, a color that reflects her sunny character. Japanese name for Rubia, a genus of plants. So kind of a mysterious write-up there. Anyway, cool work from Dan Control. Here's Rat Cloak. Kalika, a Photoshop painting here. So kind of a fun piece, actually. And I use maybe fun in quotes, but it is pretty fun, actually. Here, this guy with all of these bandages. I mean, it's kind of horrific, too. You know what this reminds me of? I mean, it's like in The Last Judgment, where it's what is the saint that is looking off, that is staring directly at the viewer in horror? Perhaps this work here, and almost these kind of Bosch-like devils. And then here. Yeah, so I use fun in quotes here, and beautifully painted at the bottom here. So a beautiful digital painting from Rat Cloak, and I believe that's sold out at 20 Tezos each. So nice sale. And let's continue. Bazaya, Hey Ho Home Run. So the Ramones, is that Joey or Johnny Ramone? So how cool is that? So Bazaya does a painting of a Ramone figure. I'm trying to think. I don't know if it's... no, Joey's the singer. I think this is Johnny Ramone. I think the bass player, if I'm not mistaken. I love it, the baseball cards. Hey Ho Home Run. Awesome. Edition of 10, 5 Tezos. And looking like it is almost sold out. 6 left. Here's the Myth. Myth Army. Myths die on their feet. A rallying call from the Myth here as we continue. Another rad painting. Just kind of a cool vibe. Again, just cool digital painting. And you see in the eyes, there's a certain... I don't know what Myth is doing, but he somehow is capturing a kind of oil painting vibe in these kind of static pictures. You even see it here in the contrast with the red hoodie. It almost looks like oil. Like there's something like it's full of meaning. It's like pregnant with meaning. Here's a very cool work. I missed this one too. Two Strangers Are. Just a cool illustration by the Myth. Kind of interesting, mysterious, not sure, is that the Myth and everything. Just a mysterious work. I love it. And was only 7 Tezos. I missed it, unfortunately. Another illustration, and doing illustration there. Here's one by Katerina Create and Barabin. Collaborative artwork by Barabin and Katerina Create. So it's interesting because it's kind of like we see Katerina Create's subject here, but kind of more of there's more depth. There's more of a kind of something going on in terms of, there's more narrative, shall we say, in the work in terms of just all of the different things that are happening. So cool work here by Katerina Create and Barabin. This is an edition of 25 for 8 Tezos, and look at how well everything's selling. So it's continuing out here. Like again, there's money to be spent on art, which is awesome. This is Andre Summer Blues, who of course I follow. That's a glitch on X. And that's sold to Rosetto, this work here. So I believe new work from Andre Summer Blues, longtime viewer of the show. So cool illustration here, and a psychedelic illustration from Andre Summer Blues. Here's Rada, who we saw in the comments, Beneath the Candlelight. Edition of 40, and I think that's sold out at 5 Tezos for the 200 Tezos event. So it's real money. For those people that sold out at the 200 Tezos, like, what is that? Like $300 US? That's good money. So anyways, cool work here by Rata. Nice pixel art piece. And there's the rat. There's the wine. Is this Rata on his computer? And then this interesting monster. Cool light. Interesting kind of dark light. Here's Gio Mariani, who of course I follow. Rise and Shine Dreamer. So this may be old, but it's just great to see Gio Mariani's work on the timeline. Super interesting pixel artist who influenced actually Ed, as far as I remember. And here's Ed Marola. I promised I probably won't make it to the other side, so let's see. Cool vibe. Now, just for time, I'm gonna just. I think we got the vibe. Cool audio there too, and I think that's it for audio. I think I can turn my mic at least till we hit. There's gonna be another great audio piece. I wanted to sleep, but I couldn't. My pillow was full of sand. So more just interesting colors here from Ed, and interesting mark making actually with these kind of cross pixel arts. And so using perhaps different kinds of pixel art software, not sure. And you can see just like an improvisation here, one suspects, by Ed, and cool on the net here. Kind of these different kind of pixels, so to speak, or pattern pixels, some cool text that is shimmering a little bit. Edition of 20 for 10 Tezos. And look, already 6 gone. And nice collector base here. Spiegel's Mech, Ahek, Tezopotamus, and Gory Orgy. I've been here before. Ed Marola. Again, kind of a video game vibe. Interesting originality here. So there's something to be said for just making things and seeing what comes out. And this seems to be what happened here. You know what this looks like? It looks like a stage set with this person here above. And so kind of interesting. I was walking around this palace searching for the internet connection, but couldn't find the correct app on my phone. Edition of 101. So very cool work here by Ed Marola. Look at Murakit. This wild work here. Girls Gambling. And this is an edition of 3 for 15 Tezos. Now, I thought it might have been moving, but I guess maybe not. Oh, yeah, I can see movement in the frame. Kind of a snowy-like texture. Kind of reminiscent a little bit of Martin Bruce in that kind of snowy, as you see up here. But then you have this almost what looks like a dog's playing poker, but in this case, it's girls at the casino, or women at the casino. Not sure what that says at the bottom. I think there's another one. And here there's a little more animation in the text, and I think that says boom, but I'm not positive on that. And here it looks like more casino, if I had to guess, or maybe slot machines or arcade, not sure. So pretty cool artwork from Murakit, remember the print we saw earlier today. Now look at this, Runner's High. This is by Zico Jam with music by Weird Grip. So, of course, we can't play the full 4 minutes. But pretty fun. I love the concept. Just driving music. Pretty rad music. Pretty cool. And nice video there. And look at that moon with horizontal pixels, even those mountains. Kind of has a vaporwave kind of look to at least the top half of this work. And you gotta love this kind of cycling color over up here. Runner's High, edition of 100 for 2 Tezos. How many are left here? 23 left. Get it while you can. Pretty cool. Upgrade by Spiegel's on Zora, interestingly. So has 104 sold so far. So my computer upgrade.exe. So cool work here by Spiegel's on Zora. So interesting sequence, isn't it? As the plants, there's the cycle. Pretty cool. Here is Brain Dead, emergency number 001. And this is part of a show, I think, called Pixel, if I'm not mistaken, or Pixel Art 1 or something like this. Cool piece. Nice kind of minimal, kind of has a bit of the Pixel Art Factory vibe, but also has its own thing. Kind of almost has a cool abstract, like pixel art abstraction here. Pretty interesting. I like the grays here too, kind of the different gradation of grays. Here's Stippen Pixel, SM52. So I think we heard from Stippen in the comments there. And here, just half a person, really cool pixel artist, I think out of Argentina, if I'm not mistaken. You look at their older work on Object. If you kind of like this work, you'll see a lot of really beautiful pieces. Also the newer work, just kind of a cool, really original pixel artist. Street Moment number 52. Yeah, so check out the Street Moments. Let's see if Rodeo will load up here. Oh, it's Kristen Roos. Oh, it's Françoise Gamma Inspiration, Kristen Roos. So this is on Rodeo, and they still don't have a maximize. Let me see. And how many are gone? 193. So actually doing all right there. And so here is the piece. So inspired by Kristen Roos by Françoise Gamma. So it's pretty cool, right? This scene, again, I think it just adds credibility to this scene. When artists are influenced by other artists and there's conversation, it shows that there's something happening here. There's an intellectual engagement that's going on here. Most Wrong King, every day, from the outside. Because I think, and the reason I say that, you might think that's obvious if you're in the bubble. But for those that are outside the bubble, they might not kind of put two and two together and think there's much intellectual going on here or influence and inspiration between people and all that sort of thing. Most Wrong King, every day, cool. Cool abstract here. This is on X. I'm not sure if they mint anywhere. Here is Karim Safa. More kind of minimal pixel art abstraction. Very nice piece. Pretty fun. And this is 20 Tezos each, edition of 10, and 2 gone so far, 1 to Spiegels. And here's Kristen Roos, Adamant. So again, another kind of, what would you call this? Pixel art abstraction? Retro tools, vintage software, beautiful colors here. I wonder what is this a deluxe paint? It doesn't say 1920 by 1080, 2024. Nice piece. Looks like it's made for a TV, doesn't it? 1920 by 1080. Here's another work. Maybe there's a show that Kristen Roos is putting together here. Portal number 7, this is December 3rd. And here we are. It looks like more cycling gradients here and more retro tools, which is kind of Kristen Roos. Let's not forget the website of Kristen Roos, where it goes through like the history of different softwares. Incredibly valuable. Have to revisit that. And this is another thing I was thinking. If I shorten the show, I don't even and I limit myself, let's say, to 20 minutes of prep. But I love this idea that all of a sudden it's like, oh, let's look into the history of Rimbaud, as we did in earlier episodes. Let's actually go through some of Kristen Roos' vintage software, okay, where it's not necessarily, again, this newspaper, keep the newspaper of the imagination idea, but where it's not necessarily comprehensive, but this is interesting. Let's look at this. I think we'd get the same value. Maybe we'd even get more. So that's what I'm thinking as I fiddle around with the format here. In the new year, basically, I hope to have kind of a slightly different situation in this show. So all patience, please. But hopefully for the better. Look at this. More abstract pixel art. This time Gogolitis. And this did fabulously, this work here. And this is vortex.exe. This is went for 310 Tezos. That's $541 US. Nice work, Gogolitis. Lost in the Woods, Stalamir, another pixel artist. So kind of seems to be playing with that, what do they call that? Lenticular print, right? Where it kind of like you look on one hand, and now it seems so, because Stalamir had made some lenticular prints where you kind of see the work move a little bit, and I think you see different things happen. This seems to be a pixel art work that's influenced by lenticular movement and the way you see a physical lenticular print, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty cool. This is for the 200 Tez event, 200 edition of 200 for a Tezos. Saturday, this is by R. Presti, who we've seen a lot of kind of pixel art abstract works in the past. So here is something a little different, kind of a bit of a painting here, so to speak. So pretty cool. Saturday, edition of 40 for 5 Tezos. And so cool work there. You know, sometimes if works aren't selling, you can always, you still might want to take a chance. If you like the work, you can always take a chance buying it and see if they're burned. You know, that you can be rewarded sometimes in that respect. Muji, Perception. So Muji with a cool work, another kind of broken, is this like an iPod perhaps? What is this? Deluxe Paint 2, interestingly. Perception, not sure what the machine is. But cool work. Edition of 100 for 2 Tezos. Anis Abdin, day 343, has been putting out a pixel artwork every day. The end is in sight, or at least the finish line of this sprint or this marathon that Anis Abdin has been doing this year, putting out a work every day. And look at this. This is in one day. So how to get great. Anis Abdin. Datura, great to see Datura's work. Panorama Lemmy for the 200 Tezos event. Beautiful work from Datura. Great to see new work. Always kind of has a bit of a representational aspect, interestingly. It's always verging on the border of abstraction and representation. As you see here, it looks like a panorama, right? Edition of 45 Tezos. And here, as we run through the rest of this episode, here is Acid Boy, the master of psychedelic abstraction, reflections of the self. So pretty epic situation here from Acid Boy, living up to Acid Boy's name here. So pretty wild work, edition of 58, and sold out at 1 Tezos each. So nice work there. And here is Max Drecker, old school abstract artist Machina, who is starting to make work again on Tezos, which is awesome. And really pushing things here too. So interesting abstract here. Animated abstract, Machina, cool title for the 200 Tez event. Here's Psychofuturist, No Science Can Substitute Myth. Cool title. Love this kind of illustrative kind of line, black and white line with a little bit of illustration here. I find it quite powerful. So nice work here from Psychofuturist. And that's an edition of 1, sold out at 100 Tezos. So the market also enjoying it. Here's Perfect Loop, Touching Grass. I thought this was great. Kind of Super Mario Clouds. We have kind of a 3D lawn, and then we have all of our digital lives, these icons, Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, etc., destroying the grass. Pretty hilarious. And here is Silva Santus on Teia. Look at this. Kind of seems like effects on effects, doesn't it? Adding some, it's pretty cool. Taking the glitch ROM and seeming to add a layer on there. It's looking pretty rich, isn't it? And pretty abstract. Collect for 1 Tez, edition of 22, I think. And continuing on, Kyle Flemmer, Hero's Journey 1A. I thought this was pretty cool. I really enjoy these works that Kyle does. And there's like a big, Super Mario star, perhaps. And all of this just kind of digital chaos here. And here's another one. Punch Out. So probably using the game Punch Out. So not doing a glitch ROM, but kind of playing with, maybe the graphics and maybe turn it into a stamp and then just filling the page. And then interesting kind of little picture in a picture there. Edition of 1, selling to Cap'n for only 9 Tezos. Good deal. And here's another work by Kyle Flemmer in a different series and playing with more of a kind of an analog video glitch technique here, but still video games, seemingly. Very rich textures here. And continuing on, Gino, Puyu Talk. Got a little, some more cool music. Now this is 4.5 minutes. Gorgeous music. So I apologize to the artist. So pretty epic work here. Pretty epic work by Gino. That is an edition of 40 for 5 Tezos each, and they're selling pretty well, aren't they? And continuing on, we have Ex Mortal on Verse. So Verse continuing to put out a lot of shows here. This is Ex Mortal the Fountain. So let's see if we can make that larger. So cool, more nature work. Kind of a interesting, kind of a simpler glitch, for lack of a better term. Here, usually we see a little more distortion in an Ex Mortal. This one's called Sigil. So here, another stream, interestingly, and some interesting kind of lines here on the right. And auction ended $579. Tell you, digital art, it's good business. Ex Mortal Magic Mountain, auction ended $230. You know, it seems like Verse, like their collectors do like to spend money. Like we saw Cider there, half an ETH. They have some, it seems like they have like collectors with some deep pockets that really respect what Verse does and are willing to spend. Like this is quite a beautiful work here too, for good reason. $230. So only 0.058 ETH. So ETH is getting pretty expensive at $4,000. So here's another one. 0.1 ETH is now $410. So cool work here by Ex Mortal on Verse. And finally, Crystalline. Nice kind of simple, kind of feels like, feels a little more low res in a good way. I could be wrong on that. $518. So fantastic work for Ex Mortal on, look at this one, on Verse, and just going through the whole show here. More just fabulous glitches here. That went for $605. And here's also Ex Mortal on Object, a nice minimal piece, looks like a moon, edition of 11, and now on secondary, I think, for 22 Tezos. Look at that. Beautiful. Is that, yeah, it's on secondary. What did it sell for? So nine Tezos, or $15 each times 11. So again, so fabulous month for Ex Mortal. It's just really cool. Max capacity, N1224. Kind of a dramatic work here, looking like an atomic explosion or something. This is an edition of 20, and this is probably for the 200 Tez event. And Hans picking up a whole bunch, hilariously. Well, or not. So anyways, nice sales there. Brainroy. This is by Kurt Hustle Collective. So, not sure what's happening here. Kurt Hustle Collective, keeping things interesting. Okay. Hilarious. Those guys always keeping us guessing over here. Here's Uran Yacon, who I've never seen before. The hand in my self-portrait has 6 fingers. Interesting piece, isn't it? Collage, GIMP, and Photomosh, edition of 1, only 4 Tezos. If you want to pick up a reasonably priced one of 1, there you go. Neural Divine, edition of 1, 10 Tezos at auction. Pretty interesting. I think this is AI as we start to round out the show with the AI artworks. Here's Kika Nikolela. Hyphae number 1, also part of the 200 Tez event, I think, and this is AI. So cool kind of AI artwork, kind of organic, almost looks like moss, but with neon colors. And this is edition of 100 for 2 Tezos. And how many are left? There are only 4 left. So get it while you can. Look at this brilliant painting. This brilliant AI painting by Ile. This was a head turner. What does it say? 1 of 1 by Ile, minting soon, who of course I follow. Brilliant. Beautiful and brilliant by Ile. That is, yeah, great work. And look at Skamra. Look at what Skamra is doing. Like, what is this called? GM. Yeah, did a space with 1 of 1 just the other day. So very cool there. I'm really looking forward to this. Come join. So look at that. And we have other works by Skamra here. So more just paring it down. Kind of pixelation, texture, AI, and you see, you gotta love the texture in here. It's so painterly. Incredibly interesting work here. AI artwork. And I think we have others that are even, as or more interesting. Like, look at this, again, here I am on the superficialities of the negative space, but it's so painterly, what we're seeing going on here. Just gorgeous. And it looks like someone walking in a forest. Let's continue. Hopefully that unfreezes. Let's see how long it takes for that image to unfreeze. Okay, I'm not sure if we missed one there, actually, but you know what? I think it shows up at the end. Actually, I think this is actually where we should be. Lily Illo. So Lily Illo putting out a series here, which is pretty cool. More AI artwork. And what is this called? Please feel free. The series is called Self-Directories. I brought them all up here. Note to self. So pretty interesting, again, painterly AI artworks. Like, look in there. Right? As the sun goes down, good thing I have the light on in here. Otherwise, it'd be getting pretty dark. Temporal paradoxes. So again, pretty nice. It's easy to forget these are AI. Another AI work here in edition of 20. So again, look at that background. Very painterly. And finally, portrait of one who reads spaces. So pretty cool. Even just the way this nose is done and everything. The hair. Interesting series. Gorgeous. Edition of 20. And here is Santiago, also known as Time, view from my NFT office. Indeed. View from our NFT offices, all of us here with our thousands of pictures that we don't know if they're worth anything, but we just keep going. Demons Waiting, another work by Time. So pretty cool. As you can see, the texture here, kind of playing with more of almost like a knitted kind of AI texture. And before my computer crashes, we are at 131 here. So another work, this is called Uranium Bowl. So celebrating the uranium, this is Santiago. Pretty cool. I'd zoom in, but it may crash my computer, and we got to keep this video. Some Sarah Blues. There's Mikey Wilson doing a blues work with a nuclear reactor in the background. So you have to laugh. I have to laugh especially. Like my life... Somehow the Tezos blockchain is calling Adrian Pocobelli to it in all aspects. Toe, this White Solitude, another brilliant, look at the, isn't it interesting? These AI paintings. Now, I'm kind of curious what happens when we start experimenting with printing, physical printing, but this is pretty darn cool, isn't it? Digital artwork, White Solitude. Here's Peter Roman. Sitter01, this was posted in the community. Pretty cool here as well. And again, just the kind of work that you would find, like that probably AI, just might have been a lot harder to come up with without AI. Here's Gregorio Zanardi. This is going to be on Super Rare, the swimmer. So cool. Again, seeming to incorporate digital transformation, I'm tempted to think. But making painting new by incorporating digital techniques, seemingly. Here's Walk. And I think this might be a Kanye West album cover or something. I don't know what it is, but it's spectacularly done here. Again, virtuosistically, is that a word? Virtuoso work here from Walk with the spray paint and with the color. Perhaps it's, from the original album, if that's what it is. Brilliant execution, though. And that is your show. Thank you, everybody, for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time, take care.